listening to the Friday Five here on the Agent Survival Guide podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Ruppel, and this is our weekly recap of 5 headlines that you should know about. Today is November 14th. We'll start out this week where we normally do at number 5. Last week, the internet absolutely lost its mind over the Starbucks Barista Bear Mug, which was available in very limited quantities. Naturally, that led to disappointments, fights between customers, and a whole bunch of hilarious social media posts mocking the whole thing. And then this week, Apple announced an accessory that made more than a few people scratch their heads, because really, no one asked for it. But the iPhone Pocket is a thing you can order for either $150 or $230. Unlike the iPhone crossbody strap, which to be honest is actually useful, the iPhone Pocket is literally just that. It's a sock-like sling for your iPhone that the company claims can also be used to hold AirPods and other small items that you would likely stick in your pocket. Personally, I don't see that turning out too well, but maybe my mind would change if I saw one in person. The company also showed the short pocket version looped around a bag handle, similar to a clip-on lip gloss or hand sanitizer. The pockets are described as a, quote, 3D knitted construction and come from the iconic design house Issey Miyake, same designer as the Bao Bao bags, those sometimes duochrome handbags made of little triangles. I do have to say, I get the fact that this will be instantly recognizable for those carrying it or attaching it to their bag. And bag charms, super trendy right now, but as far as functional, I'm just not sold. It's not like the phone is out and accessible. It's in a little pouch, or I guess I should call it what it is, a little pocket, seemingly worn just as much for show as it is for function. It reminds me of those vintage tie-on pockets that women used to hide in their dresses back in the day, which I learned about in an episode of Articles of Interest that we'll be linking to in the episode notes, because the history of pockets is actually fascinating, believe it or not. The iPhone Pocket is available for purchase beginning today at a very small list of 10 Apple stores or online at apple.com. Number 4, super short mention here, but if you've got a rural health area in your market, this is important news. This Wednesday was the deadline for states to submit their applications to the Rural Health Transformation Program, and all 50 states filed bids. The program is set to distribute $10 billion between 2026 and 2030. $5 billion will be dispersed evenly between approved states. The other $5 billion will be awarded according to how each of those approved states meets the goals outlined in their bid pitches. Approvals will be announced by December 31st of this year. Coming in at number 3, we've got an update on the government shutdown. On Sunday night, the Senate held a vote to reopen the government and got there with a 60-40 split. And then late Wednesday night, the House voted 222 to 209 to approve the Senate version of the funding bill and reopen the federal government. President Trump signed the deal into law not long after the House vote. The deal to reopen the government comes with 4 separate appropriations acts that we'll be linking to in the episode notes. There's the General Continuing Appropriations Act of 2026, and then the more specific Agricultural, Rural Development, and FDA Appropriations Act, the Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Relegated Agencies Appropriations Act, and the Legislative Branch Appropriations Act, all for 2026. The Continuing Appropriations Act of 2026 included funding for most government agencies, with timeframes running from the end of January 2026 up to 3 years, depending on the agency. SNAP benefits are fully funded through September 30th, 2026. And for states that paid out any federal expense benefits during the shutdown, they will be reimbursed for those monies, including if they paid out SNAP benefits to their constituents. One thing missing from all 4 of those legislative documents: any update on ACA subsidies. So those are still set to expire at the end of December. A lot of different ideas have been floated around about how to deal with those expiring subsidies, from the proposal I mentioned in last week's episode to many others, including one that would circumnavigate the government and send the money straight to those purchasing plans on the marketplace. And then a last-minute inclusion that I've been reading quite a bit about: reversing the Farm Bill provision of 2018 that loosened federal restrictions on hemp. In the new federal funding bill, hemp products cannot contain more than 0.3% total THC or more than 0.4 milligrams combined total per container of THC. And this ban covers both naturally and synthetically derived THC. THC products that are considered intoxicating, like the Delta 8 and Delta 9 variants, seem to be the target here. And then there's the fact that the industry is largely unregulated, meaning that variants available from non-reputable sources get lumped in with those who are following the rules and being transparent about sourcing and dosage. The new ban on hemp products goes into effect 1 year from signing on November 13th, 2026. As far as the ACA subsidies, that is likely to come down to a separate proposal requiring its own vote in both houses of Congress. So for now, the longest government shutdown in U.S. history ends. We will be keeping an eye on this story as it continues to unfold. Number 2. Last week, Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk joined the list of other pharmaceutical companies who have joined the Trump administration's Most Favored Nation drug pricing campaign. We haven't talked much about this on the podcast as of yet, so consider this a recap. At the end of September, Pfizer was the first company to agree to the administration's call to adjust pricing on existing drugs to that of comparable developed countries, and for pricing on new drugs to also be set at a similar price point as other developed markets. According to Pfizer's press release, they plan to offer, quote, the large majority of the company's primary care treatments and some select specialty brands will be offered at savings that will range as high as 85% and on average 50%, end quote. In order to obtain the savings, consumers will have to use the new direct-to-consumer drug platform, TrumpRx.gov, which is rumored to launch in 2026. Later, in October 2025, AstraZeneca shored up their deal with the Trump administration. They plan to offer direct-to-consumer sales savings for, quote, eligible patients with prescriptions for chronic diseases at a discount of up to 80% off list prices, end quote. They committed to participation in TrumpRx.gov as well to, quote, allow patients to purchase medicines at a reduced cash price from AstraZeneca, end quote. In mid-October, EDM Serono, the U.S. subsidiary of Merck, announced that they would offer their IVF treatments through the TrumpRx.gov direct-to-consumer platform. EDM Serono named 3 of their IVF treatments that eligible patients with prescriptions could take advantage of at, quote, significantly reduced prices, end quote. And to get super specific, for patients with prescriptions to all 3 therapies, quote, patients will access an 84% discount off list prices, end quote. Also, answering the call from the Trump administration's Most Favored Nation drug pricing campaign, Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk both made announcements about their respective deals last week. But to keep things spicy, their deals fall under both the broader umbrella of the Most Favored Nation drug pricing campaign and one of its implementation methods, the generous model, which we'll get to in a moment. Eli Lilly announced that upon FDA approval, they hoped to offer Zepbound and its soon-to-be-released orforglipron, a GLP-1 in pill form, through Lilly Direct, their own DTC drug platform. Lilly quoted quite a few prices in their release for self-pay patients. The Zepbound multi-dose pen in the lowest dose will start at $299, and additional doses will cost up to $449. Multi-dose pen prescriptions will refill at a cost of no more than $449. Orforglipron will be priced at $149 for the lowest dose. Additional doses will run up to $399. Also coming to Lilly Direct as part of the MFN campaign, Emgality, Trulicity, and Mounjaro will also be available for self-pay patients at 50 to 60% off current list prices. Self-pay patients is the operative word there. Self-paying for prescriptions while holding insurance, unfortunately, does not contribute to your deductible. Depending on the person, that may or may not be a good deal. Also included in the Lilly release, a reminder that insulin will remain available at the $35 per month price point regardless of whether a consumer has insurance or not. Novo Nordisk agreed to cut prices on their semaglutide medicines, Wegovy and Ozempic, on their own DTC, NovoCare. Unlike Eli Lilly, they did not reveal pricing details in their official release. All 5 pharmaceutical companies announced participating price reductions in their drugs via their own DTC platforms as well as TrumpRx.gov when it launches next year. And I know that we mentioned this previously, but I want to mention it again. These savings that we mentioned may or may not be picked up by insurance companies. All of them mentioned savings associated with self-pay patients, purchase on DTC platforms, or purchase on TrumpRx.gov. So just something to keep in mind if your clients have questions. Depending on the diagnosis your client has or doesn't have to go along with their GLP-1 prescription, that is going to determine what is the best course of action for them. Currently, many insurers will not cover GLP-1s for weight loss unless they have also been diagnosed with obesity or overweight with one condition. The main label use for the medication is for those with diabetes. And then the last thing to mention, all 5 pharmaceutical companies were granted a 3-year period of relief from tariffs in exchange for participation in the MFN. Now, let's move on to number 1, which is the other half of the Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk MFN campaign announcement. Simultaneously, CMS announced a new drug payment model for Medicaid, the Generating Cost Reductions for U.S. Medicaid, or GENEROUS Model. And yes, we like to get very creative when we're coming up with these model names. This model is how CMS plans to implement the new drug pricing for those on Medicare and Medicaid. According to CMS, the generous model will allow the agency to, quote, negotiate with participating manufacturers for lower prices, while states adopting the model will implement uniform, transparent coverage criteria. These consistent standards will give patients and providers predictable access across participating states, end quote. Participating states is a key word there, as the model is voluntary for both states and drug manufacturers. According to CMS, drug spending in the Medicaid program is, quote, significant and increasing, with net spending of $60 billion in 2024. An increase of $10 billion from 2022, end quote. The model aims to keep prescription drugs accessible for those who need them, lowering the price for both patients and the government, with the hopes that medication use will in turn cause better patient outcomes. Under the generous model, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, and Zepbound GLP-1 medications by Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk would be available to a select group of Medicare beneficiaries. And as mentioned earlier, should orforglipron, Eli Lilly's oral GLP-1, follow the projected path to FDA approval, it would also be available. Now, let's talk about that select group of Medicare beneficiaries because there is a reason for wording it that way. Savings will not be available on all GLP-1s for all Medicare beneficiaries. Prior to the generous model, only those with type 2 diabetes or cardiovascular disease could receive coverage for their GLP-1 medications. When implemented, the generous model will extend coverage to Medicare beneficiaries with obesity. Beneficiaries with Part D benefits will be phased into model participation through 3 stages. Phase 1 will include overweight individuals with a body mass index, or BMI, of more than 27, pre-diabetic individuals, or those diagnosed with cardiovascular disease. Phase 2 incorporates overweight individuals with a BMI greater than 30, individuals with uncontrolled hypertension, kidney disease, or heart failure. And then Phase 3 will include overweight individuals with a BMI greater than 35. CMS will launch the generous model in January 2026, letting it run for 5 years. No word yet on the exact timing of those phases, but I'm sure we will be hearing from CMS on that front. As far as Medicaid beneficiaries go, coverage depends on if their state opts into the generous model. CMS is seeking letters of intent from state Medicaid agencies interested in participating. And last but not least, let's talk cost. For Wegovy and Zepbound, starting doses will begin the model priced at $350 per month for those in Medicare or on Medicaid. That cost will decrease over 2 years. No word yet on how much. Starter doses of Ozempic and Mounjaro will run $245 per month and also decrease over a period of 2 years. And then the last pricing detail we have right now. A Medicare beneficiary who qualifies for coverage under either the expanded criteria or Part D phase-ins outlined by the generous model, they will pay just $50 per month for their GLP-1 medication. Just a reminder that we are still in very early stages of the MFN campaign, TrumpRx.gov, and the generous model. We will likely be circling back to this story to update it in future Friday 5 episodes or a standalone episode, so be sure to follow along with our show so you don't miss out on any of that information. And be sure to visit the episode notes too. We've got links to all the resources we mentioned today, so you'll find links to all the press releases from CMS, the pharmaceutical companies we talked about, the legislation to get the government up and running again, and even more information on the iPhone Pocket, should you want that. Thanks so much for listening to our Friday 5 episode this week. A little bit of a long one today. That being said, I hope you have a great weekend. Stay healthy and stay safe out there, and we will see you next week. The Agent Survival Guide podcast is a production of Ritter Insurance Marketing, an integrity company. This episode was written and produced by me, Sarah Ruppel. Script editing and fact check by Tina Lamoureux. Podcast design by Urban Rivera. Follow along with our show wherever you like to listen.